onto our special guest of today, Mr. Martyn, aka, and I can now say Mr. Sludge Mag. How are you doing? I feel really like liberated being able to say that, because the past couple of times you've been on, we've kind of just been talking as if you're like an editor of Sludge Mag, just like a sort of like guest writer. But this is the first time we're actually acknowledging how much Sludge Mag is all of your work, like this massive thing, like, and also just to say like, congrats, 25k followers.
Come
as
on,
well.
come on.
I appreciate it. I should just say, although I am the founder and editor-in-chief, I wouldn't say it's all of my work as such. So as an editor, you do commission pieces from other people. I've worked with loads of other photographers, stylists, makeup artists. So although I'm kind of, providing the infrastructure, it's the culmination of like a lot of talented people's hard work.
Obviously, like you say, it's made up of multiple people's work, but then ultimately you are the mastermind behind all of this.
And I will testify to this. So for those of you who don't know, Martyn and I are very good friends. And I've known for a while. I actually guessed. Like Martyn didn't tell me, I actually guessed. I figured it out like ages ago. But I will say, like, he is very humble, and it's true that obviously it is very much a community effort, and there's a lot of people involved, and everyone anytime anyone has been involved, they've always done a brilliant job. But I see firsthand like the blood, sweat, and tears that Martyn has really put onto this, and everything from his own financial commitments to the hours and hours and hours every single day that he literally slaves away making this. And I've seen times as well where he's felt dejected or he's faced hurdles, and the reason he's always kept pushing on was because of how important it is for people, right? And the social good that it's doing. And it is very, very, very much, Sludge Mag, I would say, is very much a social cause. As a friend of the mag, as a friend of Martyn, as someone who's always looking and seeing what he's doing and why he's doing it, I would say with full confidence that it's a social cause. So as humble as you are, babe, big up yourself,
Kicking things off then, let's go back to the beginning. Is it like 5 years ago now? Like, how did Sludge Mag actually come about? Like, why does it exist?
Yeah, so it's 2017 when I graduated from my undergrad in visual communications, which was just a pretentious way of doing photography. And around that time, there was also a general reaction. So I think it was Theresa May against Jeremy Corbyn at the time. So coming back from uni and going back into my sort of friendship circle in Derby and just having conversations about who people were voting for or if they were even registered to vote, I felt as though the average person's knowledge of politics and how it affects their life wasn't really where it should be. And I also feel as though there's a bit of a chasm between people who are most affected by politics and people who are the gatekeepers of media pertaining to politics and politics itself. In a lot of sort of media circles that I've experienced through interning or working in the media, there's predominantly people from backgrounds like mine, so relatively, kind of secure middle class backgrounds who aren't the most susceptible to government malpractice, unfortunately. So I felt as though it was important to do something to kind of, democratise political discourse so that the people most affected would, find the decisions accessible that were going to shape their lived experiences.
So it was very much steeped in your own lived experiences, and I definitely agree, and I can definitely resonate with how much, as you were saying, there's a chasm between the media gatekeeping of news. A lot of young people particularly will be like, oh, I'm not interested in politics because they think that it's all just old white men in suits. A lot of people don't tend to realize how much actually what's going on in Westminster will impact their day to day. So definitely that does resonate a lot with what you've said. What would you say, I've got a question, what would you say have been like the biggest challenges in doing Sludge Mag? I guess this is kind of going to be like a two-tiered answer. One respect is like the running of the magazine, but also I mean in terms of delivering news to people. You know how you've just said the reason why you've done it is because so many people are actually genuinely and sometimes innocently uneducated. What have you found to be like hurdles in then trying to rectify that?
In terms of the magazine or the mechanics of the magazine, if you like, I think it's learning how to do things. My undergraduate degree was in photography. And when I started the platform, I hadn't done my master's yet, which was in media and communications. So in terms of how to best utilize social media platforms, in terms of how to use Photoshop and Illustrator and create content that resonated with people, just actually running a magazine from not knowing how to at all was a hurdle, I suppose, but it was also quite an enjoyable process. There's a lot of satisfaction in finding what works, achieving success with new methods and that kind of thing. I suppose another hurdle as a person is the kind of mental toll it takes. Obviously, news unfortunately mostly pertains to tragedy and bad things happening to people. So being able to compartmentalize your day-to-day life and remain, someone who has something of a positive outlook whilst sort of trifling through the worst news life has to offer for hours every day, is sort of difficult, but you get better with it as you get older and with experience and stuff.
How have you found that people have responded to the kind of, because obviously Sludge Mag is very much an independent news source, which we will touch on the significance of that in a bit, but it is also, I would say, it takes a political stance. It very much does take a political stance. It doesn't shy away from being political. I think sometimes when people hear independent, they think it means politically neutral, which, I mean, it's not the case with Sludge Mag, and rightly so. But how have you found it having to deliver news that in a way that sits on one end of the political spectrum to people?
In terms of how people respond, as you said, the platform does have a political subjectivity, if you like. So naturally, some people agree, some people disagree. In terms of how I've dealt with it, I'm relatively indifferent. I don't see the positive comments or positive response to it as praise for me as a person. It's more ideas that people responded positively to, a lot of which aren't my original research or things like that. Most of my kind of political subjectivity comes from reading, a lot of hard work from other people, researchers, authors, that kind of thing. And then in terms of detractors, again, relatively indifferent. Everyone has the right to an opinion. I suppose from my perspective, if you're going to be putting opinions online, you can't be upset that people want to put a contrary opinion in response to that. So yeah, it's fine.
So I know you're a better man than me. I stay logged out of the Mango Masala account because I feel like anytime anyone says anything, I'm just responding, what's your address? Big man, what's your address? What do you mean we should starve the children? What's your address? So a lot of respect for the grace and patience that you have in doing that.
We actually did put out on our socials some stories where we were asking questions, what people wanted to know about Sludge Mag, independent media, the importance of it, etc. And we've already covered some in brief, but I think one point that did come up quite a few times was regarding the idea of political ideology, which I think we have sort of covered in the sense that obviously Sludge Mag in itself is definitely left-wing platform and about how it shares content that not necessarily supports its narrative, but that is useful for the people in general. I did see one response which was talking a bit about, which I think is particularly interesting in relation to Sludge Mag as well, which is how long do we sit on sort of on our phones, sort of kind of double tapping and sharing and whatnot, and not actually doing anything. And like, so what how do you feel about that? Because obviously I think Sludge Mag is so good in that it provides so much information and knowledge and news to people that might not necessarily take it in from other means. However, I do get what this person or people are saying in the sense of, I think there is a lot of what we like to discuss, a lot of social activism that goes on, and I feel like a lot of people might come across Sludge Mag, maybe think, oh yeah, this makes sense, share a post, and then feel like, oh, that's me done for today. Do you know what I mean? So like, do you feel like that's maybe a negative element to it, or do you think that's to do with the actual people that are engaging with the content?
No, I don't think it's negative. I think it's about understanding what media is. So, of course, if the extent of someone's involvement with their community was sharing Instagram posts about it, then that would be completely pointless. I think the society is made up of many things. So you have the media, you have workers, you have workers' unions, you have council. There's so many things that make up a society or community, if you like. I just think the media element of it could be better. So, democratizing media and creating media galvanizes people to now support striking workers, for example, or support people undertaking industrial action of different sorts. That's kind of the point of it. So I completely agree with the sentiment of the question. I'm not affronted by it. I think, the point of media is to inform people and galvanise them to do. The media in of itself isn't the sole point.
That's actually such a benefit of social media in today's day and age. I think a couple of decades ago, it might have been impossible to have the same sense of mobilization that you can have now in terms of the reach that you can get and sharing one particular message and having lots of people digest it all at once.
I think Marcus Rashford's probably our generation's best example of mobilising social influence to turn it into action. If he just tweeting how bad food poverty is, yes, that would have been pointless. But through, sharing information about fair share or the importance of donating to food banks and things like this, I should often be happy that charity is the result of policy failure, so it's not a good thing. People shouldn't be poor in the first place. But for the sake of this point, it's using influence to mobilise people into action. The influence in of itself isn't the end destination, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful actually and really insightful to see something like Sludge Mag as a political tool in your arsenal of social activism. The first step is always to understand what a problem is. And Sludge Mag always, anytime they're sharing something, they will have like a link to resources or a way to help or whatever else. And that's always the next step, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if you think about if you go to the doctor doesn't just say, oh, that's what's wrong with you. There's a treatment procedure or something.
Yeah, 100. And I think a lot of people just generally who learn from social media or who get most of their political news and discussion from social media, it's up to them individually to be very cognizant of that the fact that just learning something or reading something is not always the kind of be all and end all.
I think as well sometimes the benefits of things aren't necessarily tangible, and yes, it leads to actual change in the future, but just in a social sense, if someone reads some information about part of the LGBTQIA+ community and then has a more present interaction with someone from that background, as of having read something, it's not that I'll know, or people won't necessarily be able to point to that as the point of making a post, but I would hope that it happens.
It's a shame that I think that mindset of thinking that it ends at sharing a post is quite a prevalent thing, I think. But I think the only way people are going to learn is by actually understanding that engaging with media isn't the end point of this. It should be a catalyst rather than the actual thing itself.
Of course, yeah.
I think another question which we had in, which I'm particularly interested in as well, which I think might be an opportunity to get away from the doom and gloom of the news as well, but we'll see as to what your answer is. But what's your favourite piece that you've put out from the magazine so far?
Oh yeah, good question.
It's nearly impossible. At this point, we've had like hundreds of pieces from like loads of really talented people. So I think to narrow it down, I'll say what my favourite piece is that I was directly involved in. So I'm actually wearing it now. We made a football top.
I was about to say that's my favourite Sludge Mag thing.
Favourite women's football and women's inclusion in sports more generally. So we got to feature Nadia Whittam, Martyn Ewoma and Amy Cripps. So Nadia Whittam's the MP for Nottingham East, Martyn Ewoma's a really talented sports journalist, and Amy Cripps is the women's football editor at Versus. So we shot them wearing these jerseys, which I designed with my friend Aisha Brown, who works for Adidas and is a really, really talented designer. So going through that whole process and having something like tangible that we can kind of like give back to our supporters while showcasing people who deserve the spotlight on their amazing careers was really cool. I'd say the second thing, funny enough, which ties in quite nicely to what you were asking before about, I suppose, people's fear that Instagram activism or just engaging with media doesn't really do much. So we have something on Sludge Magazine called the Anti-Racist Reading List,
Yeah.
which you has actually contributed an article to, and loads of other really talented writers have as well. It also features an anthology of sorts with books, TV shows, films to aid people in anti-racist education. So last year I was involved in a initiative with Derby City Council called Heads of History. So we got every history teacher in Derbyshire together to talk about history curriculum reform. So as a result of which, the history curriculum in Derbyshire has been diversified, and I would hope that people going to school now have, if not a perfect, somewhat reformed experience of learning about history throughout secondary school. Obviously, this event was organised by the council, so I had a really small part in it. It was actually my good friend Kyle who presented the reading list there. So although our contribution to that was proportionally minute, to think that the magazine might have actually gone some way to making sure all the children around from have a better history education feels really good.
Yes, it's cog in a machine. No one person is solely responsible for any one thing, you know?
Where do you see Sludge Mag as a platform going its next 5 years of existence?
It's hard to say with the kind of nations and borders bill, and myself having heritage from 3 countries, I might get deported and it will all end. Or I don't know, we'll see. As opposed to I'm not someone who looks that super far into the future. We'll see what Britain under Liz Truss looks like. But what I can say is if it continues to be as fulfilling as it has been thus far, and we continue to have an influx of super talented and passionate people working with us, I don't see any cap on where it might go. So we'll have to wait and see. So thanks to a company called Steady, we've introduced a membership program with 2 tiers of membership at the moment, which will allow you to support Sludge Mag so that we can fund all our operations, whether that be our creative shoots online, travelling to do the shoots and interviews we do, and general upkeep of the site and platform. Becoming a member will allow us to keep doing that.
If you don't mind clarifying, membership is obviously a way of supporting Sludge Mag. Is there a way to do that and then also be involved in more than that in terms of like writing pieces for it or submitting photograph collections, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So if you go to our website to the contact section, there are submission guidelines for fashion editorials, photo series, and written submissions. As I was saying before, really getting people who wouldn't ordinarily be involved in establishment media involved in media is one of the central points of Sludge Mag. So we've been very proud to showcase the fantastic work of people from a really diverse set of backgrounds, and we'd love to do that more. So if anyone would like to get involved, those are the best means to do so.
And just remind us again, where's the best place to find Sludge Mag?
So Instagram at Sludge Mag here, our website here, Twitter here, and our TikTok here.